Hey everybody, welcome to Purpose People. We've got an amazing story to tell with Louise McMillan coaching. Obviously, we're going to be speaking to Louise McMillan. She's got an amazing story to tell about resilience and overcoming and stuff like that. And so we felt it would encourage many people on the podcast to just hear her story and where she's got to. So Louise, welcome to the Purpose People podcast.
Thank you very much for inviting me along. It's brilliant to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, and you know what I'm really impressed with? You're wearing yellow.
I know, I'm blending in with your corporate colours in this room.
Corporate colours, the Purpose People brand. I'm wearing grey. It's like, this is great.
This is the perfect one.
Perfect one.
Perfect podcast.
So Louise, I mean, there's loads of coaches out there, right?
Yeah.
Loads of coaches. I obviously talk about many buses coming along, but there's many coaches in the entrepreneurial world. What makes you different?
Oh, a good question. I think from where I focus on supporting people is the fact I've been there. So I've had that career.
It's not theory.
Sorry?
It's not theory. It's something that you've lived.
It's lived, yeah. It's that whole lived experience. So it's where I've been. It's the kind of things where I felt alone, and it's supporting people now about them not feeling alone, and being what I call like their cheerleader. And it's when I work with my clients, it's no judgment, which there shouldn't be anyway with coaching. But it's that whole thing about, if you've got nobody in your corner, you now have somebody in your corner. Yeah. So anything that you want to talk about, that you want to bash out ideas or whatever, there's no one going to be saying to you, "Oh, why would you want to do that for?" It's like, okay, what's that going to give you? And it's just helping them just talk it all through. So that's what makes me kind of different, is because I'm not kind of pigeonholing myself into anything, but apart from being someone's cheerleader to support them to be that kind of person they need in their life.
No, I like that, because again, you can have coaches that literally follow in a playbook, and then you have coaches with the life experience to back some of that playbook up. And also the thing of that, if you know that they're in your corner, it helps you go, well, I've got someone to bounce ideas off of, and where I need to go and where I need to get to. And I think, for me, those are the coaches that are great coaches, because they know they've been on a journey. Ollie, that we know, that's part of Humans, he's been through a journey and a story to get where he's got to. So I like it when it's relevant rather than they've gone from consultant to coach.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what I'm talking about. But I guess from your perspective, not only have you been on the journey from that perspective, you've been on a journey with your health as well. You had a major health challenge as well. And the resilience to pull through that is an achievement in itself, that you can help a lot of people. Because I think for me, being a leader or an entrepreneur or business owner or whatever, you often feel alone.
Yeah,
and it's not often talked about enough.
Yeah.
And it's like, when you say you've got someone in your corner, sometimes you feel like you're painted into a corner.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's quite good that there is someone there with you to push it back. So just tell us a little bit about your journey. Tell us a little bit about the illness situation first, and then we'll open it up and we'll discuss around the rest of it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose, obviously you're referring to my cancer, but my illness goes back further before then.
Yeah.
So my background was HR. My career was in HR for a number of different organisations in the Southwest. And from growing up and never really believing in myself, I suppose in some respect, never really having somebody that was truly in my corner to turn around and push me. It was done because I felt that's what I needed to do. And I did. I was very successful in my career, and I was professionally qualified. So that was all on paper. That looked great. Yep. But I never believed in myself, thought that everything I was doing was too simple. Someone was going to find me out, that I was a fraud.
That imposter syndrome.
That whole imposter syndrome, yeah. And so therefore I used to overcompensate. If I didn't look after myself in terms of just how I managed the external noises that were coming in from different people, let alone who I call Cre8ion in my head, my inner voice, I would really beat myself up. So I didn't look after myself mentally, and therefore I would overwork, overcompensate, be sat there with my sort of head in my hands, kind of going, I'm missing something. This can't be this simple. so therefore I was, sometimes taking myself longer because to do stuff.
Yeah.
And then when I wasn't in a good place, I'd be overeating. I'd stop going to the gym, stop socializing with my friends, didn't think I was good enough to have a friendship group. As I got into my 30s, very much cancelling nights out because I wasn't funny enough, interested enough, looked right.
Wow, okay.
So a whole lot of real self-loathing going on. And I never took time off work poorly. I just kept going. Because if I stopped, that's total failure.
Yeah. Okay.
So the only thing I could do was keep going. So
of course.
As I got into my late 30s and early 40s, it was very lonesome, even though I was going to work every single day.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know which hat I was wearing.
Yeah.
And of course, it all comes quite tiresome and consuming. And then I was deep in and out of depression, really spiraling sometimes really badly into depression. Crying on the bathroom floor when I was supposed to be getting ready to go to work.
Wow.
But then, put my face on, got to be done, got to get out there, game face on and go out. And the challenge is that with HR, is that you look after everybody else in the organisation, but who's looking after HR? And even though I said I have mental health.
Very good point.
You don't have mental health problems if you're in HR. You're not resilient enough for HR. So you give support to everybody else in the organisation, but to be someone in HR that's openly saying they've got depression, that they're struggling, only a pocket of people of HR would support.
Did you ever vocalise that, or you just didn't have anyone to tell?
I vocalised it, but it just felt that it was pulled. I was then kind of black marked.
Wow.
You learned after a while that would have been held against you.
Yeah.
So because I was in HR, I referred myself to occupational health. Because I knew the people, because you were chatting there, and then you'd add a little bit extra time to talk about me in occupational health. So I got some help in a roundabout version.
And was that in a fairly big company?
Yeah. And it wasn't just one company. It happened in multiple organisations.
But I think that's the thing, because I've freelanced in corporate, so I've not worked for corporates, but I've definitely freelanced in there. And the overriding thing I get is politics. And when you said, it could be held against you, that's often the game that you have to play to get to where you need to get to. You have to be very political.
Yeah.
And, that's probably why I never liked it. I enjoyed working freelancing, but I could literally, that person, it didn't matter.
Yeah.
Because I was a freelancer. So it's like, it doesn't really matter if so-and-so doesn't like so-and-so, whatever, then fine.
Yeah.
Whereas if they've got decisions on whether they, I made friends with the finance team. I needed to, because they paid my bills.
Yeah.
The most amazing thing with that is that a 30-day payment terms, I was getting paid in 7.
Nice one.
And then they come and apologise to me. They go and say, I'm really sorry. We've done all our changes. Everyone has to be on 60-day payment terms. I think, great, that's going to be.
Yeah.
So we're going to pay you in 14 days. I was like, okay, fine. But no one else did. I don't know how I did it, but it's because I got on well with them and connected with them. So I made friends with the finance team, and I ended up freelancing with the ex-creative director, which, because he was such a cool guy and quite fun, a whole load of people would constantly keep using him. And so because I was working with him, we always got work. But there was other stuff where it's just like teams against teams.
Oh, absolutely.
People against people.
Yeah.
They go have a meeting and moan about one person, then go and have a meeting with somebody else and then moan about the one they just met. It was just all that sort of stuff. It's horrible.
It's horrible. It's like children. Yeah. It's like school playground.
That's what
it really was.
The best way I could describe it. It was like a playground. Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So from your perspective, you're dealing with the aspects of depression, and obviously you're in a much better place now.
Yeah.
But do you think that's because you're doing what you're supposed to do now?
An element of yes, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, but also because I had cancer, which was, as I said, the best thing that ever happened to me.
Wow. Okay.
Best thing ever.
So why was it the best thing that happened to you?
Because prior to being diagnosed, I was in a really bad state of depression and did contemplate whether I still wanted to be here. It was that whole big thing. What's the point? What's my purpose? And then when I was diagnosed with breast cancer, I didn't find a lump.
Yeah.
So, thank for NHS for doing the test they did to be on the safe side, because they found my cancer.
Wow.
Which I'm utterly grateful for. But I got diagnosed with breast cancer, and then it was bigger than they first thought, and it had spread to my lymph nodes. It meant I had to go and undergo chemo. And before they told me, the day before, I literally had this gut feeling that I was going to have to go undergo chemo. And it's one of those pivotal times when you kind of, I'm going to trust my gut instinct. That came true, that whole kind of thing. And then after having my first chemo a couple of weeks later, I had appendicitis, but we didn't know it was appendicitis. We just thought it was the side effects of chemo, which ended up meaning that when we did realise I was in quite a bad state, it was now borderline peritonitis.
Wow.
I had an abscess stuck to my bowel and my colon, had to have major emergency surgery, intensive care, 48 hours, blood transfusion. My hair is now falling out. So I'm sort of semi-bald because obviously it's short. So, but what happened during that time was the nitpicking and the snide comments and the little derogatory remarks that came around from whether it be family members, friends and stuff. It stopped. But what I did realise was that people liked me. I had HR colleagues and other colleagues I hadn't seen for probably about 10 years get in contact because they heard. And it was that kind of whole revelation of, well, I'm actually liked.
Wow.
People do like me. And that sounds silly, but I was actually in hospital saying this to my mum. She goes, well, people like you. And it was like a real eye-opener for me because I think people just tolerated me, which is a really bizarre thing to say.
So what do you think attributed that? Why do you think you came to that conclusion then?
Just for years of kind of never feeling good enough.
Wow.
Comments being made. It's that whole thing, people say, oh, sticks and stones will break my bones, but names will never hurt me. But if someone says something often enough and a comment comes from multiple sources, then it must be true. And actually what you realise, it isn't true. It's just people hear these things and they comment and it just chips away at you. If that makes
I would
sense.
agree. Words carry legacy. Words create worlds, both positive and negative. And there's a lot said about positive thinking, of positive affirmations and that sort of stuff. But conversely, it's the negative stuff. Someone says something long enough, or you call people names long enough that then they begin to believe it. And maybe you're going into the hospital scenario, not to sort of like, self-diagnose or whatever, but there's almost that reset button where you were out of the whole thing and being in another environment. You then almost got a bit more of got a different perspective on life. Absolutely.
And also then it felt that I was allowed to be me. It was like a whole revelation. It was like, it's like I was sort of like born again. It was just like a whole huge weight had been lifted. And I had a career break then to finish off all my treatment. So, I didn't have to worry about work. I could just spend that time repairing me, which I had never done beforehand. I'd literally finished one job and started with the next. And, I never gave myself time to recover from a depression. It was just a case of just kept going, right, I'm feeling better now, would just build myself up. But never to get back up to that stage where I'm thinking, right, I'm here now and this is the level, rather than being so far down and then dipping. Now I'm at higher level, and when I dip, it's not as far down as what it was before.
Yeah, and I think for me, one of the things I find as an antidote to imposter syndrome is what's happened to you, where you feel you can be who you're supposed to be. Because I think often we fall into roles that we play and we know really deep down we're maybe not there, but sometimes it's that it's not lack of knowledge of your subject that gets you over imposter syndrome. I believe if you really find out what you're supposed to do, it removes the ability to have to compete and fight your corner.
Yeah.
Because you're comfortable in who you are.
Absolutely, yeah.
So like for me, there's bigger creative agencies, there's bigger podcasts with people, whatever. But I'm influencing the world that I can be responsible for. And that's all that matters for me. So if I can help 1,000 people, great. That's fine. That's my world. But if it swells, then great. But I'm not gonna get hung up on, I must have 100,000, 200,000, 1 million people to influence. I'm influencing the right people.
Yeah, at the right time.
Without the need to compete.
And at the right time when it's right for them to hear it. Yeah.
And listen, and if I don't reach 1 million people and well, maybe that was never meant to be anyway.
Yeah.
Do you see what I mean? I don't get. I think when we first started, you're looking at seeing who's connecting and whatever else, and that and I've read a lot on people starting podcasts and this sort of stuff. And the key thing was just do what you believe that you're supposed to do, and everything else will take care of itself. And I think and that principle works in life generally. When you know who you are, you'll find your who and just serve them.
Absolutely, yeah. You find your tribe, as I call it.
Yeah. Find your tribe to thrive, as they say.
You find your tribe to be around, but also then you find your tribe, or the tribe will find you, the right tribe will find you to listen to whatever you've got to say. And I always say when I share my story, if one person takes one thing away, whether it's that thing about being who you are, or whether it's when I share my little bit about my cancer, if someone takes one thing away with them that makes them make a little slight change, then that's that I'm happy. It's that thing is just.
So obviously you're in the hospital bed, and there's this realization, like, hang on a minute, I'm actually quite a cool person. And
I didn't say cool. I just said I liked. Yeah, I'm cool.
Yeah, you're cool. But you kind of now know that actually I know who I am, and I believe I've got something to give. Would that be a fair assumption?
Yeah.
So how did you make that transition from getting better then to step into what next looked like?
Well, I trained to be a coach about a couple of years beforehand.
Okay.
So I kind of had that sort of inclination beforehand.
Yeah.
But again, didn't believe in myself. And when I started back after my career break, I went back into a HR role. It was more recruitment. I specialised in recruitment at this point.
Yeah.
And I had this one morning when I was getting ready for work, and as a quote that had, if you always do what you've always done, you'll always get what you've always got. And it was like, yeah, that's true. And I was driving to Bath at the time. So quite a bit of a journey. And it was in the car, and I can't remember what I was listening to. It would have been radio too, I expect. Listening to something that was being said in the car. And I thought, yeah. And then on the way home, I was just going, right, this is it. I'm changing. This is what I'm going to be. I'm going to be a coach. I'm going to do it now. I've had this thing of life is short and life is fast.
More than anybody. Yeah, of course.
In this past year. So that's it. I'm going to go ahead and do something different. And that's what I kind of followed.
And do you think because you went through that experience, that was almost the clarity and the almost permission that you needed? So you could say, you know what, life is short. I don't know what, I'm just going to go for it this time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I kind of said that, when I was diagnosed with cancer, it was a case of, okay, this is it. I'm going to, deal with it. Having the appendicitis was just to remind me that perhaps if I wasn't taking this serious, that I was getting a second chance. This was the kick up the arse that I needed, if you know what I mean. This was the kick that I needed to say, yeah.
So what do you do now? Because obviously you coach, but I guess, I'm having not been coached by you or whatever, but I think, do you feel that you almost have that as a duty to give them a kick up the butt to say, don't waste time? Or
I kind of. I don't sort of say it.
No, grab them by the ears.
It's that kind of thing about saying, what is it you want to achieve? What is it you want in life? It doesn't matter how big or how small. I always kind of say living life more fully. That's my kind of strapline. And people say, oh, so you're going to jump out of airplanes? No, absolutely not. But it's like living life more fully every single day on your terms and what it is that you want to do. So, if you want to go on a holiday by yourself and everybody around you is going, what would you want to do that for? Or you won't enjoy it, and you go on and go, right, I just want to talk that through. Then talk it through with me, and I'll be the one that's kind of going woohoo every time you do a little step. So if you want to say, right, I've booked a hotel and I booked a plane flight, and you kind of go, well, everybody's a bit negative about it. Well, that's when you WhatsApp me as your coach, and I go woohoo down the phone back at you. You just need to, you just sometimes just need that person just to kind of go, God, yeah, come on, you can do it. And
I think there's that aspect of being your own inner champion, but there's also aspect of having someone with you that's like, come on, you can do it.
Absolutely.
Come on, let's. And I think, if you look at the best peak elite performers, not saying it has to be, but like you look at Toto Wolff, for example, from Mercedes, he said, I'm talking to people all the time.
Yeah.
Because in order for me to play at this level, I can't do this by myself.
No.
I need people to say, you're going crazy, or do this or whatever. So I think the higher that you go, you need more people, not less.
Yes, absolutely. But you need the right people.
100%.
And that's so important, about getting the right people in your corner that will add something to it in different ways.
Yeah. So in terms of the type of people that you coach, what's the sort of like, do you find imposter syndrome is the main one? Or is it they just seem stuck and they can't go from here to here?
It's mainly people that are stuck.
Yeah.
They're feeling stuck. They've either put too much time into their career, and they've kind of raised their head and gone, where is everybody? In terms of, when you're 20s, you've got a whole group of friends that you can phone up and go, right, what's everyone doing Friday, Saturday, or do this, that, the other. Whereas you get older, you have to plan things in the diary because everybody's got other commitments and everything else and responsibilities. But then you kind of raise your head and go, well, where is everybody? Because, I've got plans in the diary, but that's not for another 6 weeks. And people think that sometimes they need to make a change. They need to make a change at work. And sometimes when you chat to them, it's not the change at work they need to make. It's the change outside of work. They need to make a change of going to find new groups to be part of. Join, clubs, go and meet new people. Just perhaps sometimes taking that whole step of phoning somebody you haven't spoken to for ages.
Yeah.
Because we've all got that narrative of say, oh, they won't be interested in catching up with me again. It's been too long. They haven't contacted me, so I won't contact them.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just needs one of you just to throw the lifeline there and they'll be back in their life and carried on like you haven't seen them, like it hasn't been so long since you've seen them, if that makes sense. But sometimes they just need that encouragement.
Yeah.
And it's just asking them the questions, what's stopping you from doing that? Okay. What would a friend tell you to do? What would you tell a friend? Just asking those questions to them just to think about it in a different way. And then, saying they're going to make that phone call or whatever, or going to go and visit that group. Like, okay, when are you going to do it?
Yeah.
What's stopping you from doing it? Okay. So you're going to do it on Wednesday at 8:00. Okay. I'm making a note of that. If you're in the car beforehand and you're worried, okay, it's in my diary, give me a call, we'll have a chat, and then you go in. And half the time they don't phone me, but they tell me the next day they've done it and it was absolutely brilliant. And that's when they get the woohoo from me.
Yeah. And so do you find that is a lot of your work more on business, or do you think a lot of it leans more to life and more life as an experience in life?
Yeah. More life experiences. Yeah, definitely.
So what, because obviously so much has happened like from COVID to now. Right. So it seems like we've lived 10 years in three because life looks so different from what it was before, and what do you think is the biggest change that you've seen in living life from before COVID to afterwards?
I think there was a need of people wanting to do more and having that life-work balance and getting out there and experiencing new things. I think a lot of people realise that. I think the challenge has been about getting that balance now where work is still the same, whether they are working in an office, whether they're working hybrid, but with the cost of everything. And that I think is the main thing that's stopping people. So there is a desire, but I think the people are still holding themselves back about what if this or what if that, instead of going, life is short. We're 3 years ago.
It's insane.
We were in COVID, in lockdown.
Yeah. And it felt like it was never going to end.
It did. And we're 3 years on, and that's a long time. And we're sort of halfway through this year already, near enough.
Yeah.
It's not that life is short, life is fast.
Yes.
And that's the thing is we've got to remember is life is fast. We've got to keep moving, got to keep doing things.
So how do you help someone that, is very, very busy in terms of business and they've got a family? How do you help them address that work-life balance? How do you do it? Is it asking them what they want out of life, or
Yeah, it's just asking what changes it they'd like to see, and what's stopping them making that change.
Yeah.
And it's for them to come up with things. And sometimes saying to me, okay, what 10 things would you like to have achieved by yourself or with your family within the next 6 months or 3 months?
But do you think sometimes it's the permission thing's the problem?
Yeah.
They can't do it because X, or they won't give themselves permission to do this because of X. Yeah,
they're always finding something to stop them or worry about, and that's when you kind of ask them, what's the worst case scenario? What happen if you, what's the likelihood of that happening, and who's saying that's likelihood? And it's some inner voice that we've all got from our childhood and our upbringing. Yeah, and it's all that I think about seeking permission, and it's like saying to you, okay, I'll give you permission to do that. Is that what you want? And and it helps people. It helps people, yeah. Who do you need permission from? Well, nobody. Then what's stopping you? Because I'll give you permission if you want it. That's the kind of way I kind of look at it. And then once they realise that, then they go, yeah, I'm going to give myself permission. Yeah, because I was quite fortunate. So I was
I originally started Cre8ion within a charitable setup, and there was a lot of stuff going on, and eventually I had to come to the conclusion, well, you know, what is it that I want to do and what is needed, and to take it to the next level. And it was obvious the current setup would not allow me to do it. But it was a case of having enough of the right people in your life that could see it objectively. Were saying, well, you absolutely have to make the decision, and you have to take ownership, and you have to say yes to what is on your heart to do. And rather than dealing with a lot of other expectations, like, what do you want? And I think when that question was asked, it's quite a confrontational question. What do you want? Because you've got to give yourself permission even to think what I actually want. And that's where I was at.
Because it feels selfish.
Yeah, that's what it felt like. Well, for the first time, I've now got to think what I want, because I was so used to not doing that. And then it was like, but the question, when I went down into my heart, is like, where, because the reason why we started it is to impact the media and create the most influence and impact that we could. Could I do it in this vehicle? And when heart of heart said it, no, I couldn't. Not in this setup. And then that gave me the permission, so to speak, to say the impact was the thing that gave me permission to make the change.
Yeah.
Because I knew it was going to be limited, stifled and strangled in order for me to take it to where it needed to go. And, you know, I always say time tells, but, you know, we're impacting more and more people just by doing a podcast, for example.
Yeah.
You know, so our vision is to reach 100,000 CEOs. Now, we're not going to do 100,000 workshops with people, but there'll be people reading a book or listening to the podcast or whatever. So I am impacting more people to double down on purpose and go after it. But there was that thing of, when you answer that question, what do I want? It's that, it feels a bit selfish.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's, for me, I think that's what a lot of people might feel, why they haven't answered that question.
And it's hard because we've not been asked that before.
No.
Or if we had done, it was, what do you want to do? And it was all about careers when you were at school. Yeah. And there's this thing of, you know, a society expectation that you finish college, you get a job, or university, whichever route you take out of education, but then eventually you get a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then you meet someone and you get married and you have children, and that's what there's an expectation of. Every time somebody asks a question, is, well, you married, or you got children, or what do you do? It's never about anything outside of those three things. And we never ask that, because that's the expectation that we all have. And there's nothing wrong with that. No. But it's also embracing that might not be for everybody, and it's okay if they don't follow one of those routes. Yeah, and I think that's the thing, is that you're asking that question, and I think, again, it wasn't necessarily being, because once you get used to asking, it's like, well, what do you want? Yeah. For me, I guess I started with a conversation, what do I want? But what changed to is just trying to phrase it in the right way. What must I do? Mm-hmm. So maybe people talk about finding their why. Yeah. But I've said recently, it's a statement I was saying, when your why becomes a must, then you've hit purpose. Because you can find your why and do absolutely nothing about it. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But when your why becomes so deep that it's a must, that's what gives you permission. So my must become, I must do this to get the most impact out there, to help people go after purpose. Because there's too many people sat on the fence. And if I can push them all off into purpose, that's going to be a better society, because people are doing what they want to do. They feel more fulfilled, less suicidal, because they're alive in terms of what they want to do. And they're living their best life now. And I think that's what happened in COVID, where everything was pressed on pause. Yeah. And people finally had the chance to reevaluate. And then the brave few went, this is my why, and I must do this now. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think that's the thing, is people have done that, and other people have just gone back to where they were before. 100%. And they're back to life's not great, and they're moaning and they're unfulfilled. But that's all symptoms of a much deeper problem. It's the fact that you've not found your why, and B, you've not turned it into a must where you must make changes. Like your situation was like, when you realized you were given that second chance, you're like, I must do this now. Absolutely. Yeah.
And that was the big change, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And sometimes it's not easy when you're on your own, as we said earlier on, in your business, you're on your own and stuff. But it's that thing of, you've got to keep going, because this is, I must do this. I must get out and help as many people as I can.
It's not an expectation of everybody else saying you must do it. It's
your own.
It's coming from here. I must do this because that's what I'm born. I could have been born in the medieval times, but I'm born in an age where there's podcasts going.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So I've got to do this, and for me, that's what drives me, is like, you ask that question, I must do this, because we're talking about it in between the breaks. We had one guy listening, and I've told my story about when I quit a marketing agency that I was going to own and run, and someone listened to it and they quit their job after listening to it.
Wow.
And long story short is they quit their job on it. It sounds like a Cre8ion song, but they quit their job on a Friday, had an interview on a Tuesday, and had a new job by the Wednesday. So when I saw him at a networking event that he came to, he was like, "You're not going to believe what your podcast has done." I was like, "What do you mean?" And then he told me the story.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, great. But at least if it's just done one thing that he feels more fulfilled, I've done my job.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're the stories that you kind of, that's those you relish on, isn't it? And because you know you made a difference to somebody, even though you may not have done it. I don't know what's the word I'm looking for. Inadvertently, you've helped somebody, isn't it?
100%.
Yeah.
So what about you? I mean, obviously you've been impacting and helping people make decisions for life or whatever. So you obviously client confidentiality, you might be able to describe everybody, but is there any scenarios that you can share where you've seen a dramatic difference that's given people some confidence and clarity in life?
Yeah. Someone who's gone on and done a college course, who's now thinking about setting up their own business.
Wow.
At some point they were just stuck where they were, lots of things going on, and Jen, just said, well, what can you do about it? And it's quite creative as well from what we're doing beforehand. So
also, what were they doing? Oh, maybe you can't say.
I've got to be careful what I say, but what they're doing, careful. But they're doing something which is totally different from what they were doing beforehand. So they're doing the evening classes coming towards the end. So potentially a second year, which they're obviously looking at doing, but they've also been doing some work experience. So taking some holiday and doing some work experience in their chosen field to move forward. And that's quite exciting. And it's lovely. It's when they share their homework with you, it's just like, it's quite sweet because they're kind of proud, and it's like, it's great. So that's one. And another person bought their own house from years of being told that they would never be able to buy their own house. She went out and bought their own house, which to some people might go, well, you just do that. But
no, not everyone can.
Well, not everybody can. And because she just didn't believe she could, and not support there of breaking it down. She was just breaking it down into manageable chunks. And it was just, obviously they were up north, so I didn't get to see it, but obviously because it's all on Zoom, but you just hear about it. You saw the photos, but you know what I mean? It is, it's just hearing them kind of going that one step forward, and just them realizing who locally could be in their corner to help them. They hadn't thought beforehand.
So how would people find you then? So is it, from a perspective, is it, they engage in your services because they're stuck in life generally? Is that often how it works for you? Yeah,
that's what they kind of comes back. And I suppose because I talk about that whole anxiety and that depression and not living life, it resonates with people. And that's why then they start chatting to me to say, look, something resonated. And then how do I work? And I have a coaching program that is there to help, which is called the Living Life More Fully program.
The Living Life?
Living Life More Fully.
Living Life More Fully, yeah, cool.
Yeah, program, which goes over 8 sessions, but 6 different parts of it. Or it's just a case of just whatever, they've got something there that they want to work on, then we can do that. So it's flexible, but even the program's flex for whatever they may need.
So you've got the framework.
So you've got a framework, but then it's you
can go in any different direction.
And it's just understanding what it is they want, and giving them that.
Just talk us through then. So some of the symptoms that someone may have where they absolutely need to work with you, what would you say?
Sometimes it's loneliness.
Okay.
Absolute feeling of loneliness, not having that one person. So quite a lot of my coaching clients have been single professionals.
Yeah.
And that's when we realised that it's not actually, because I suppose they come to me first of all because I've got HR background. So they kind of think, oh, you might be able to help because you've got HR and therefore can talk about career. But when you find out actually, they realise it's not the job, it's everything else.
Yeah.
That kind of helps. And so therefore, yeah, you kind of pinpoint on that to understand what it is they want.
I find often that the job is the thing that gets the bad rap, when actually it's a lot of the other stuff around it.
It's everything else around it.
You know, and then you might have to change the job. You might change because it doesn't fit anymore.
Yeah.
But there's much more than just the job.
Yeah, because certainly people change jobs because they think that's it.
Yeah.
And actually what they've done is kind of put a plaster over something, and then the plaster comes away eventually, and they're just in the same position as they were 2 years beforehand, but just in a different environment.
And I talk about that in purpose. So people change jobs because they're unfulfilled in their job, and then they change their job and they're still in the same place.
Yeah.
Because you still got to live with you, right?
Absolutely. So it's people that are lonely. It's people that have got that little bit of imposter syndrome. It's people who are just bogged down with day-to-day life, really, sometimes that just gets in the way, and the should do and the need to do, they're always being told, and it's like taking them away. Yeah.
So obviously you've got your coaching business and you're really successful in terms of helping people and that. What's next? What are your plans? Are you from beyond there?
From here, so it's doing more speaking. So going into organisations and delivering my talk, which is unpacking mental health with a curveball, and talk about other things such as vulnerability and self-loathing, and doing more of that. But also then working within organisations, trying to get that. It's that whole thread about mental health around it, but trying to look at it without putting that label on it, because a lot of people don't like labels, but sort of saying, no, how are you managing your boundaries? Are you establishing your boundaries? How are you enriching your tribe? How are you energizing yourself and nourishment? And it's not just about the food, it's about, who is spending loads of time just on social media. It's like, do we need to do that? Find out what it is that gives you those great things that you enjoy. Like I always say, it's sometimes I'm happiest when I'm walking around a park counting squirrels, and that used to be a thing I would keep to myself or just say to my mum when I was walking with her. But we mentioned him earlier on. Chris Briggs is the first person now I message and say, I've just seen so many squirrels. We've got a squirrel count going on with each other about how many squirrels we see on a walk. Yeah. But it's fun, whereas, and it's fun to have those kind of people in your life rather than going, oh, okay, it's a bit weird, but don't tell anybody. But do you know what I mean?
But you're being you. You're not hiding.
You're not hiding yourself, but it's finding the right people that's going to help you. And
Excellent. So how do people get in touch with you, Louise?
So my website, louisemcmillan.co.uk.
Yep.
McMillan is a very strange spelling.
Go for it.
So if you think of the football team AC Milan, change the A to an M. MC Milan is how you spell my surname.
Okay.
Referee's daughter. I had to work
Referee's
it out.
daughter.
Ex-referee, I should say. Retired. But so you can find me there. You can find me on Instagram and also on LinkedIn. Okay,
cool. And so they would just send you an email or click the contact button?
Yeah, send me an email. We book a time on my calendar either. That's links on there on the website. And I always offer a time of chatting, no obligation. Literally just have a chat. Sometimes it's chat to people and they sometimes feel, okay, fine, I'll come back, and they come back 6 months later. But it's just always have a chat with them over Zoom, because I always think like seeing people is so much important than just having a telephone call.
No, and the other thing I say is we've seen you talk. You've done a talk at Humans and that, and it is, if people are looking for a speaker, you're a great speaker as well, and your story, and the story that you tell and the journey that you went through is really impactful as well. And I think we've touched a little bit on the podcast or whatever, but it'd be worth getting Louise to speak at your event, because she's really good at what she does, and it's a story of resilience, but it's a story of hope for those people that are struggling through stuff, and people do, like in the talk, they left enriched, and it's saying, okay, you're not the only one that's been through tough times, and I can do it too.
Absolutely, because I always used to say I was weird, I was wired wrong, and thought it was just me, and that's why I want to get my story out there, is because we all have these moments. It's about being human.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Thank you, Louise.
Thank you so much.
Absolutely loved it. Thank you so much. Hi, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Purpose People podcast. You can follow us online. You can like and subscribe to us on YouTube. You can follow us on Apple, Google, Amazon, and Spotify. And if you see any clips on our Reels, which is on Instagram or Facebook, or even on TikTok, please give it a like, please give it a share, and please tell your friends. We'd love for you to take part in the Purpose People questionnaire that is also through our website at Cre8ion.co.uk. And hopefully you can find yourself living a life on purpose.